And welcome to a new episode of Hollywood Kitchen. It's right close up. And today I am very excited to welcome two very special guests. The first one is Andre Darlington, who is an international food and alcohol writer. Sweet, no. Anyway, anyway, he is the author of multiple books on cocktails, and his latest basically combines the world of pre-code Hollywood and prohibition cocktails, and it's called Forbidden Cocktails. And it's got a gorgeous layout, tons of recipes, and there's even some obscure pre-codes in here I haven't seen. So I'm very excited about this book. And also joining us is a frequent contributor, Liz Locke of the blog Cinema Sips. So Andre and Liz, welcome to Hollywood Kitchen.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. This is a real treat to have, sweetheart. We're gonna be good. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so we're gonna open up by talking about pre-code. And when did each of you first discover the pre-code genre?
Liz, go ahead.
Well, I found it at Turner Classic Movies Fest a couple of years ago. I guess it was 2022 that year. And they were showing Cocktail Hour and Jewel Robbery. And I just absolutely loved both of those films. And I was just like, where has this been all of my life? Because it's like glamorous gowns and international travel and so many cocktails and really strong female characters and really contemporary plot lines. And I was just like, give me all of it. So I've been lucky enough that the Austin Film Society, I live in Austin, Texas, and they show some pre-codes throughout the year. So anytime they're showing one, I am there. So I've really tried to beef up my filmography.
Nice. I came from it from Cocktail World because The Thin Man is probably the greatest cocktail movie ever made. It's just so boozy, right? And so clever and so funny. So that sort of pulled me in, and I had seen that, and I had seen a few movies around it. And then I really got into even more pre-code when I did a book for TCM in 2016 called Movie Night Menus that kind of went from, they were basically, let's go from, when there's sound to, I think we went up to like Moonstruck. So in early 80s, another great movie. And that was a bit more food, so a little less cocktail focused. But it turns out, I started choosing movies for that book, and it was like, oh, I got to cool it on the pre-codes. Let's have some color in here and move forward because you can really do a whole book on pre-code, which luckily fast forward a number of years later, and here we are with Forbidden Cocktails. So.
I'm so in love with pre-code in college because when I was in high school and college, VHS was still kind of the thing. And then you had laser discs. And so
Yeah.
there weren't a ton of things as available as it is today. And for
Yeah.
a long time, I kind of thought a lot of classic movies were very wholesome, like Mickey and Judy and the Barnyard Dance or whatever. And I
Right.
think it was like my sophomore year in film school, I saw Babyface and I was
Oh, that'll do it.
it just blew
Right?
the lid off my head, basically. And it just shocked me, but in a delightful way, because that really is like the Citizen Kane of pre-code, as I think Leonard Maltin has described it. So when I first got your book and I opened it up and there's a cocktail called Fuzzy Wuzzy, I was like, yeah.
Had to. I love that line. That whole scene with the fuzzy wuzzy and buying. Everyone's buying her stuff, and it was such a phenomenal movie.
And I love seeing these anytime I go to TCM or even at the UCLA Film Archive here in LA. Anytime they show a pre-code, seeing it with a live audience is, I mean, seeing it at home is great and all, but seeing it with an audience is so good. Because one time I saw Babyface, and every time Barbara had a new conquest, shall we say, the cheers got louder and louder. It was like a pep rally for Barbara, essentially. And it's so fun to kind of be in an audience for these movies?
I can imagine. I mean, it would really put you in the frame of mind that I think people were in when they were watching them. They're very irreverent. They were very iconoclast for their time. They kind of went against a lot of the other films and certainly against a lot of the other culture of the time. although the culture was complicated, which was one of the draws of doing this book too. But yeah, these are really fun movies, and I think there's this idea that movies are especially if they're black and white and they're early, they're going to be stilted and they're not going to be that much fun. And I try to tell people, I'm like, these are as fun as it gets until the late 60s.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Oh,
Basically.
absolutely. And I love some of the titles of these too. I mean, if people know these movies, they're going to go, oh my God, I get that reference. So the titles are very, very clever in this book too.
Mhm.
Well, thank you. I mean, so this is book 12 for me. So it's been, a long time in getting there. I'm not sure I could have done this book that much earlier, honestly. So it was kind of exciting. It kind of came together for me that, as you know, I mean, there's just so much in pre-code, from the actors and actresses to the directors to what's going on culturally. So it was a huge lift. I was ready for it. I went after this project because it's so meaty and so interesting and exciting. But along that journey of those 12 books, I've owned restaurants and I've consulted on cocktail menus and whatnot. So there's a history on the backside too of what grabs people's eyes in terms of cocktail names. So I really got to be fun on that. And I'm one of those people, I'm not particularly stuffy. I do like things to be done the correct way, but when I had the moment that I could, put in a Count Drackery, I'm gonna do it because no one has and it's too much fun. And the movie's so great. So I like to have fun. I really wanted to get the sense of, if you open this book and you don't know pre-code at all, and you just see you see the title of the movie, but then you see the drink title and you're like, what is going on? I want it to be funny and enticing and grabbing and that and whatnot. And so sometimes, some of the movies have a more serious or historical tone, and I go with a more serious cocktail name. But some of them, as you mentioned, earlier, the fuzzy wuzzy, there's just certain things that jump out as lines. And actually, while I'm watching the movies, right, I watch the movie again, watch the movie again, taking notes, and something will catch my eye and be like, "That's it. That's the cocktail name." It just fits. And some of it's low hanging fruit. That's fine. Some of it, you have to do a couple puns, and then some of it is like, really, that's the line. That people remember from the movie. And it's just having fun with it and making it memorable. And more than anything, I want people to see this book and watch pre-code.
I was having lunch with a friend of mine the other day, and her background is in criminal justice, and she went from doing that to being a tequila expert and working with all
Nice.
tequila companies. And we were having lunch, and she mentioned that I'd posted about your book, and she said, "That's an interesting title, Forbidden Content. Why would they be forbidden?" And then I explained to her about pre-code. She didn't know about pre-code, so I
Yeah.
sent her a whole documentary about pre-code. So my hope is that she will fall in love with these movies as we do and even use her liquor and tequila knowledge to maybe make some of these recipes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot of confusion over pre-code, and it's been funny even with some of the, reviews of the book. People, I think, just go out to Wikipedia, and it's like, oh, pre-code's kind of blah, 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 blah. But for this book, for TCM, Mark Vieira already wrote a Forbidden Hollywood book, which is amazing. Uh, Mark wrote the introduction to this book. It was very kind. He helped with, some of the, I chose the photos, but he is a well-known sort of famous for taking photos, but also photo retouching some of these old photos, and he's behind the scenes on that. His definition, TCM definition that they wanted was 1930 when the studios agreed to it, to the code, to 1934 when it was reconstituted with teeth, right? And so we're doing the 1930 to 1934. But it's a lot to get a head around because so many people don't realize that there was a code, right? And okay, so we've got to open our eyes. Like, yeah, there was a code up until 1968, I believe, basically, although it started to fall apart earlier. But you get into this history. It's amazing how much of this history Americans don't know, and it's not just film; it's all kinds of stuff. But in this particular period was buried, and I love the title. This is one of those where this was the obvious title right from the beginning. A lot of my books have had 5 titles before we settle on the right one. And this one was like Forbidden Cocktails. I just love that name because exactly that. You see the title and the cover and you're like, what's that about? So it draws people in.
Also, in history, I think as we get further along in the world, there are people who don't know that we have this thing called prohibition.
I
Like that
know.
topic does come up on my cemetery tour, and I'll get young people who look at me like, what's she talking about? Alcohol being illegal? What? And I kind of
Yeah.
have to explain to them there was a time and a place where this was the law of the land, and it's
Mhm.
almost incomprehensible for some people to understand that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that one of the crazy things for me from a cocktail perspective that was so fascinating was we watch these movies and people talk and bars talk about prohibition cocktails all the time. And we usually do it from the source material of bar books and recipe books. I have shelves of books from the 30s, well, before Prohibition and after Prohibition, right? Mostly. But you can actually go back to these films and people are drinking in those years. And what's so fun is watching the scripts try to get around Prohibition, where they start out in somewhere in the United States, and then one scene later they're on a ship drinking, or they've gone to Mexico, or they've gone to Cuba, or they're in Canada. There's all these excuses how to get people to be drinking on screen. But it was really fascinating for me because Prohibition ends 1934, so the basically pre-code era opens at the 1930, right after the beginning of the stock market, or the stock market crash in 29, and you actually have movies in here like Dance Fools Dance, which show you what life was like in the roaring 20s, and then now in the 30s. And so it's just this era of cultural upheaval. And not only do you have to get kind of your head around pre-code, but get your head around the fact that when pre-code starts, Hoover's in office, things are really bad, and we can't drink. And then FDR comes into office, we can drink, but the Hayes Code comes down, So it's very interesting. I think a lot of times people think of, the Republicans and the Catholics, brought the code, which they did in the beginning, but then it was the Democrats who came in and put the code down, so there's a lot going on behind the scenes there, which I found really fascinating.
Definitely.
Totally.
Well, we're each going to make a cocktail on camera and kind of talk about our cocktail, if you will. So,
Yeah.
Andre, would you like to go first? And we can talk while you're making it, or we can, we
Yeah,
can
let's talk while I'm making it. I brought a jigger out here, but since you had a little cat guest, I don't want to go in too long, but I want to show people I do collect 1930s bar gear anyway, so this was kind of a fun project for me. I don't know if people can see, but this is the first thing I'll show everyone. Is really a classic 1930s chrome bar set, right? So we've got
It's
6 chrome
amazing.
glasses, the tray, the chrome thing. So if you watch a movie like Possessed, which unfortunately I didn't put in the book because there's a lot of Joan Crawford movies, and I really wanted to put in Dance Fools Dance because they had more cocktail scenes. But a movie like Possessed, the butler comes down the staircase with basically this set. So that is kind of what we're talking about for pre-code era. Chrome was big. Chrome was inexpensive. It was new. It was flashy. Think of 1930s cars. The cocktail world was really following all that glam. But a fun little item that I have is this. I don't know if people can see. Now this is a measuring thimble. But one of the interesting things about the pre-code era is this is when we get cartoons. So I think Popeye is like 1928. Felix the Cat, of course, the very, very pre-code Betty Boop, right? So we have all kinds of fun cocktails. Well, the cocktail people weren't going to be left behind. So this little tumbler is a cat.
Oh my God.
So
Adorable.
1930, there's
You hear
a mouse that can come with it. I haven't found one in good enough condition to pick up yet, but so it's a little cat, and people would be using this in their homes or in the speakeasies or whatnot. So I'm gonna make my drink in a little cat. Uh,
That's amazing.
I'm doing the first movie that opens this book, Divorcee, 1930, Norma Shearer. One of the great movies, right? Kind of all time in my mind, because a woman walks basically out on screen. She's married. She's in New York. There's a lot of drinking in New York shown in the movie, so it's a great cocktail movie. And she demands equality. Women in the United States, they had the right to vote a number of years earlier, but she's financially independent, and she's also wants to be a sexual equal. This was a big deal to have that actress walk out on screen and sort of demand a balanced account. So there's a famous moment where her husband sleeps with another woman, and she sleeps with his friend. And they have a moment where she says, "I've balanced our accounts," by which to understand that she's slept with somebody else as well. So we're here facing male hypocrisy, right? But told from the point of view of the woman, which you were saying earlier, one of the draws of these pre-code movies, right, is that we're telling women's stories from sympathetic women's point of view. So absolutely, I think, kind of earth-shattering. So I want the movie goes on. If people haven't seen it, the movie goes on, and he goes off and drinks, and she sort of sleeps her way through Europe, and then they basically come back to an equal a marriage in the end. They both kind of realize that this is okay what happens, and we can be equal. So fascinating movie. I made an equal parts cocktail. There's a lot of equal parts cocktails in the canon. It's gin, vermouth, and Lillet. And I put Lillet in there because of the French aperitif. And in the movie, she does go look for him. She looks for her husband, I think, 3 times in Paris. They both have regrets, right? That they divorce and come back together. Norma Shearer goes on to do a number of other roles. As both you guys know, a number of other roles, very edgy roles for female roles of that era. She I believe, won the Academy Award, right, for Divorcee.
Yes.
Which was also pretty earth-shattering. So it's a real wallop of a first movie that opens the book. There's another book. I had already done it, so I did a book with TCM in 2016 called Movie Night Menus. That movie has Female in it, which is another movie that I just absolutely adore.
Oh.
And it has a very similar. It's a little bit baby face-ish, but it shows a woman who's she's a CEO, and she gets young men drunk and beds them, and so there's just a number of movies in that era.
And she shipped them off to the Canadian office.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot my orange bitters. So we got some orange bitters in here. So just a little cocktail lore for people. In general, you shake drinks that have dairy, eggs, citrus in them, and you stir spirituous cocktails. So that's your Negronis, Manhattans, etc. So I'm using a little stirring glass. I hope this is visible for people. I'm using a little cocktail glass here. Stir and strain. Oh, I'm going to give myself a little garnish.
That tip about shaken or stirred was so helpful reading the book because people have asked me that, and I'm like, Auntie Mame says don't bruise the gin. I don't know, like that's my only guidance up till now. So I really appreciated that.
So it's all about, it's interesting. If you make a martini and you shake it and you stir it, the one that you shake will end up having the little shivs in it usually, unless you double strain. But there's also just something about blending it on the ice over time. The texture and mouthfeel of a stirred martini, most people, of course it's fun to have a shaken martini too. There's nothing wrong with them. But I think, at the professional bars, when you see somebody using a glass like this, it's because the texture's better in the end. For the overall drink, for spirituous drinks. And with spirituous drinks, you don't need to aerate them to the same extent. So the citrus, eggs, and dairy, you've really got to aerate that to blend it in with the alcohol at all. So you just shake the heck out of it. But I tend to stir drinks. So I've got a little, I have a coupe. So most of the time in pre-code movies, you're going to see that. That is the classic coupe. It's a champagne coupe, but it's also for the cocktails. I think one of the things that's a hurdle for Americans is if you go to a big box store, this thing will be ginormous and be like, it's 8 ounces or something. If you go to a Crate and Barrel and try to buy a coupe, you're gonna end up with a huge cocktail glass. So do go to Amazon or something online and find something that the typical cocktail size is going to be between 3 and 3.5 ounces. So they're smaller. So there's a lot of cocktails in these movies, but at the same time, realize they're not drinking 1980s or 90s ginormous,
Yeah.
B martinis. We're talking 3 or 4 ounce shots,
Yeah.
basically a little
I
bit.
found my coupe glasses in an antique store, and
Yeah.
those smaller ones are the ones I use most often, for sure.
Yep. So cheers. There's
Cheers.
the balance account from the divorcee, 1930. We'll toast to Norma Shearer.
Yes, we love Norma Shearer here at Hollywood Kitchen. We have made multiple Norma Shearer recipes
Oh,
with
that's great.
Darren Barnes, and I'm sure we'll do many more.
That's great. She's fabulous. That movie's fabulous. As are so many actors and actresses.
I love that you have Strangers May Kiss in here too.
Yeah, Strangers May Kiss is a super fun. I don't remember what I did for the cocktail off the top of my head. Um, that one.
Now, Andre, how did you find access to a lot of these movies? Because that's a problem that I run into frequently is that, some of them are not streaming. And so, I collect Criterion physical media. So I have like some of them through that. But, like I was looking up a couple from the book and I'm like, God, I can't find it anywhere. Like sometimes you'll get a bad print on YouTube or
Yeah.
something. So do you have any tips for like sites that you use or where you find these?
It's a lot of digging around. There's a site that's the Internet Archive that does have
Mhm.
a number of these on there. DVDs, I know. I wish there was a better source. There was a couple of the movies that I really wanted to put in, and I just couldn't find them. And I sort of went with movies that are at least available. If you go out on the internet, you can get, a DVD or something.
Mhm.
But that's definitely a hurdle. I'm hoping that TCM plays a number of these,
Yeah.
over the next year. I think the word is from them, that they know that pre-code is hugely popular. And looking at the summer lineup, it looks like they're going to be showing a number of these.
Are they
But
going to
yeah,
have you on TCM to talk about the book?
I don't know. I don't know. But when I did
Phew.
movie night menus, I was on doing some spots. But yeah, they should, right?
Heck yeah.
There's always something, and they do have a wine club, but there seems to be a liquor hurdle there on TV sometimes. So I don't know if that's it. We'll see.
Right.
Did you find the cocktail you were looking for?
Oh yeah, she had mentioned Strangers May Kiss, which was another great Norma Shearer. I think the another Ursula
Ursula Parrott book. Yeah.
Ursula Parrott book, which I found really fascinating, and sent me down sort of Ursula Parrott route. That's a fun movie. Again, there's always an excuse to go drink, and so her character in Strangers May Kiss, finds a guy that she's interested in. I think he's a reporter, and they go to Mexico together. So that gave me a chance to do a tequila drink in there, talking about your friend who does tequila. So I'm always looking in the movies, I'm always looking for somewhere to hang the cocktail hat, what can I do that's a little bit different from the other movies? And if somebody's going to Mexico, I can put in a tequila drink, but also I love that movie.
And of course, we did a whole episode with Marcia Gordon. She wrote an entire book about Ursula Parrott, which is fantastic. And
I need to look that up. I saw that on your content, and I think she's actually in North Carolina here
yeah,
too.
she
So
is.
I was gonna look her up because that's definitely the kind of pre-code rabbit hole I love.
Yes, you need to meet Marcia. She's fantastic. And we had a lot of fun doing a Norma Shearer / Ursula Parrott episode together.
Yeah, amazing, amazing.
So, Liz, do you want to present your cocktail of choice?
Sure. So I'm kind of bookending things. Like Andre did the first cocktail in the book. I'm doing the last one from The Thin Man. And I know that's traditionally like a martini movie, but I love that you included this drink called the Asta because who doesn't love Asta? And so this one has, I'm using my Nick and Nora cocktail glasses that I got from my grandmother. So these, like you were saying, are a smaller portion size. Absolutely love them, use them all the time because, so many of these cocktails from that era are just pure alcohol, and you really can't fill a full size martini glass with this. So, or I probably shouldn't, knowing my tolerance.
I
So,
love it.
so I'm starting out with an absinthe rinse, just kind of swirling that around the edges of the glass. And if you have any tips while I'm doing this, please
Oh, you're
correct
doing
me.
great. Doing great. The only thing is if people do it a lot or you're doing it for a party, some people put the absinthe in an atomizer.
That
Other
makes sense.
other bartenders, will put the ice in there to chill the
Hmm.
glass because the absinthe gets on there. But all that is, just stuff if you want to. Just putting it in and swirling it a little bit. That's
Hmm.
all I mean when they say rinse in their books.
Okay, good to know. So I've kind of prepped my ingredients here. I've got 1 ounce of white rum. And so this is half an ounce of Cointreau and half an ounce of dry vermouth.
Right.
And then I've got, let's see, I wanted to show off my little juicer. I love this thing.
That's
It's
cool.
fantastic. It's got a little measuring thing on here and the juicer on the top. And I've only ever found it once at our local Texas HEB store. I've tried to buy more.
I love that. Yeah, if you find one,
Yeah.
let me know.
So this I'm measuring out 3/4 of an ounce here. And my shaker I know this is not the preferred shaker with the 3-part, but I like it because it comes with a measuring thing on the top and I don't have to go looking for it. And then, and then it had 1/4 ounce of vanilla syrup that I put in. So I'm gonna shake that up, do a shaken one now.
I love it. I love that you like this cocktail because I didn't want people to see what they'd already seen before in other books or other places. So I was I'd done the Thin Man actually in the previous book, and talked about it in that one. This one, Asta is so compelling.
Yes. A star. So that's it, the Asta. Cheers. Oh, that's very good. And I had started the show with The Last Flight. This is another one from the book. And this one was 3/4 of an ounce of gin, 1/4 ounce of vanilla syrup, and champagne. I used Prosecco because that's my budget.
Yeah.
and,
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
and it's very, very good. So it's been fun to try several of these here. And I will say every cocktail I've tried from the book has been a standout.
Nice. Nice.
I actually made the flat on my flutes.
Oh,
Andre has also was the author of Booze, one of the authors of Booze and Vinyl, which is how I discovered him. I have that one here. And my husband and I listen to vinyl records and make a cocktail, starting out from the book, and we've since moved on, although I need to get the second volume of Booze and
yes.
Vinyl.
Yes.
But anyway, I made the flat on my flute cocktail, and we listened to Herbie Mann's Push Push. So,
Nice. That's so great. Such a cute movie. It's a boozy drink.
yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, cheers. That's fantastic. So this Asta drink, the movie, which I have watched a number of times, but I always forget that it's a holiday movie because you get involved in the mystery, and then there's all these parties, and you realize, oh, they're having holiday parties while they're trying to solve this case. So I wanted something that I wanted Asta, and I wanted like a hair of the dog cocktail.
Mhm.
So in the canon, those are like morning glories, and even sort of French 75s can be morning cocktails. They have like
Yeah.
a vibe to them. The story with hair of the dog is that back in the day, people thought that putting the hair of a rabid dog that had bit them would be the cure. So that kind of fell into the cocktail world, these were originally drunk in the morning. But then I wanted to holiday it up a little bit, and also in my books, so the vanilla syrup is in both. That's my sneaky way of letting people or making people's lives easy. Where if I ask people to make a syrup in the book, they'll be able to use it at least 2 or 3 more times in the book. And
Mhm.
I'm saying these are really great foundational syrups that you could just go off on your own. And once you make a vanilla syrup, or once you make a couple of the other syrups in the book, you've got your holiday part. You sub into anything you find on the internet, right?
Yeah. And I'll say too, I make my own syrups around the holidays and give them out as Christmas gifts to
Oh,
people.
nice, perfect,
And it's a
perfect.
great get. Like I'm making them for my drinks at Christmas, and and then other people can too. So,
Yep.
yeah, vanilla syrup is very versatile, and I think you use a raspberry syrup in here, which is another
Yep.
one that I use often too. So
Yeah.
there's a great
Those are,
recipe for that.
those are two amazing ones that people just love.
Hmm. So, Carrie, you have a mocktail tonight, right?
I don't drink alcohol anymore, but Liz was so gracious to go through this book and make me several mocktail recipes out of the cocktails. And
Yay!
we kind of joked that there would be room for a sequel, like a postcode mocktail book or something like the Will Hayes or the Don't Be Careful or
Yeah.
something like that. There's definitely a
Something with
thing.
Breen, right? Because it was Breen who came in later and really enforced the code. I don't know. There's a pun in there somewhere.
The cutting room floor, the possibilities are endless.
Right. Right.
But Liz made this whole series of mocktail recipes for me. So thank you, Liz, for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to start with 1 ounce of pineapple juice. So let's see. By the way, you talked about the hair of the dog. I'm looking at the hair of the cat because right about this was decided my lime garnish was a cat toy. And so I'm dealing with cat hair on that one. Okay, so we've got our pineapple juice, 0.5 ounces of lime juice. I don't know how you measure 0.5 ounces. I've got a measuring thing here, but
Any little jigger will do. I think for
Yeah.
home people, what Liz has is great. Also, the OXO makes a really inexpensive
Yeah,
one.
I have this one. I think I got it in Chinatown or something, and it's just a little
okay.
shot glass with the measuring on the side.
Okay.
It comes in handy.
And I made my own vanilla syrup. I hope I did this correctly. So
I
add
love it.
syrup here. A dash of Angostura bitter. Am I pronouncing that right?
Castura. Yep.
Okay. Let's see. When you say a dash, you mean just a
Like
quick.
just put pour one dash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's our dash.
Or-
2 ounces of sparkling water. We're going to go with Topo Chico here.
That's my
Oh,
preferred.
Okay. Nice and fizzy. And then pluck the cat hair out of that line.
Nice.
And I'm going to give this a good stir. I
Yeah.
have a martini shaker thing like you guys do. And the problem is I can't get the top off of it. It's like stuck on there.
That's what you mentioned in the book, and I was like, that's a really good warning to people because this one I don't have a problem, and it's kind of a more expensive one from Williams Sonoma, but I have some cheaper shakers that I cannot get the tops off of. So, Andre, you had recommended the single,
Yeah, do a two-part like a Boston shaker, but both are metal. You can get them online. They've come way down in price. They're not expensive
Mhm.
anymore. And they're fantastic because there's nothing worse than having a cocktail party and you're constantly prying. So what happens is you shake the cocktail, the metal seizes up and shrinks. Right?
Yeah.
You can't get it open. Just a two-part shaker works. There's a number of different shakers on the market that aren't those the three-part shakers.
Right. Yeah.
Those shakers are pretty good for. I mean, they're like good to travel with maybe, or they have their uses.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people do sort of dirty martinis in them. That's what you'll certainly see them at restaurants. But most bars have moved to that two-part shaker just so you can get them open.
Hmm.
Yeah, did no one ever test that when they were
Right? I know.
Tarzan and his mate movies, those were pre-code, which may surprise some people, but they had a lot of nudity in those movies, and Tarzan and Jane weren't married. So plenty of pre-code to be mined in a good Tarzan movie.
Yeah, that one I had not seen that one before I did this book. I've seen other Tarzans, but not this one. So to go into a little bit into the method, into the madness here, I knew that the book was going to be called Forbidden Cocktails from the outset, and that was sort of the point and purpose. So when I came into the project, which is amazing because that doesn't always happen, and it really gave me a great focus to really go through pre-code and look at, okay, well, I'm going to do this from the angle then of what is most forbidden? What were the most forbidden scenes in these? And then keeping it on this side of this will be fun to watch in a group of people and not be awkward. Right? So both of those, I really wanted to think, there's some amazing pre-code movies that get pretty heavy, pretty dark. There's some of the movies that are really amazing, have really alcoholic characters, or it's the 30s. There's a lot going on in these films. So I wanted to make sure that they're pretty much just, really going to be fun. You're not going to go through all the work of queuing this movie up, having 6 friends over, and then you're all sitting there like, this is too much. So that was part of it. So that Tarzan movie was really offensive because of its name. It's Tarzan and his mate. This was a big deal in the 30s. There's huge nude scenes in there. Apparently, in theory, she's wearing a sheer outfit. I find the nude scenes absolutely spectacularly beautiful, right? It's swimming underwater. It's like early cinema. The technique, I think they had these huge tanks. It was really, progressive technologically to pull those scenes off. They're phenomenal. There's a couple movies that have these really long nude swimming scenes. I think Tarzan and his mate might be one of the longest nude swimming scenes of any movie, certainly up to that time. So really forbidden, right? So that's what I was going for in these films. And also ones that just had a lot of great cocktail content. But there's some of them that don't really have any cocktail content at all, like Queen Christina. But it's such an important pre-code movie because it helped bring the code down, right? Because it's, you can't have this happening in the movies. So certainly as you get later, Sign of the Cross is maybe the poster child for, the code coming down because it just made everyone angry, right? So, the Catholic League is angry, families are angry, everyone's angry at that movie, mainly for, its religious content. So that was really the thinking behind the forbidden on that stuff. But I love that Tarzan and his mate. I think it's a funny movie. It's beautifully shot. And it's a little crazy little bit of cinema history, I think, in those two. I think they went on to make Johnny Weissmuller made I don't know how many Tarzan movies with different actresses later, but it was this huge franchise. And people look back at this stuff, and some of these movies are obviously Academy Award winners, and they're amazing. The script is by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and we've got Anita Luce, we've got we got Ben Hecht, we've got all these great writers, and then there's just Tarzan and his mate. It's not a great movie, just like we have not great movies now, but looking at a not great, necessarily that great of a movie script for 1930, it's still so fascinating because, yes, this couple's living out of wedlock with a pet monkey, right? Well, you're not allowed to do that in the jungle and just wandering around naked. Cheers.
Cheers to that.
And it's mate. This turned out really well, Liz. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yay.
no, tiki cocktails are a really good one to make non-alcoholic because there's usually a lot going on already without the alcohol in there. So it's still a really fun drink, I think. And then, yeah, I made a few for Carrie. One was like a non-alcoholic espresso martini. That was a risk. I used this seed lip. I don't know if you use the Spice 94. And that's a pretty good option if you're a non-drinker. And it's pretty versatile in a lot of mocktails. So
I wanted to make that on camera, Liz, but it's already 5:30 something on the West Coast. If I drank espresso at this hour,
yeah.
but I am going to make it. I'm going to make all the ones you sent me, but I just listening to the camera would be the best.
Yeah, for sure. But
it's funny because the espresso martinis are so popular, and I remember them from I was coming through in the late 90s, but I was much younger, and now I see these kids coming into bars and ordering espresso martinis and having a second one, and I'm like, you'll end up in another state without your clothes. It's it's a speedball. Don't do it, you know? So they're really intense drinks, but that's what people are having. I think they're fun, right at a happy hour for some people if they're not super caffeine, you know, if they're caffeine tolerant.
Mhm.
I think I did an espresso martini for it happened one night when I was
Yes,
maybe
with a
half.
dunkable donut garnish,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, I love that.
adorable.
Yeah, I really wanted to have fun. That's another one where I've seen that movie a number of times before. That's one of those movies, there's some of these movies you're like, oh, it's pre-code. I didn't even really know that it was pre-code, right? So, one of the great movies of all time. And I'm watching it again. I'm watching what happens with the character development. And I'm watching the two, this sort of rapscallion reporter, street reporter, and this rich girl kind of find each other's worlds, right? And they do it through food, where they wake up in the morning and she just realizes the pure, non-expensive pleasure of dipping um, a donut into black coffee, and that's when that's the transit formation of her character. So that's always that moment that I'm like, well, that's the drink there somehow, and I played around with it for a little while. And then I just wanted a fun garnish, and it's fun actually, it's delicious.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about the drink for one-way passage? Because that was one that I was really excited to find. Because when I did the movie on Cinema Sips, and there is a classic cocktail called the one-way passage, and that's the one I did, but it's not the one that is made in the movie. So I was really excited that, you shared a version of, that's more in line with what the bartender is actually making in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Harry Crockett, the Savoy cocktail, I think it's in the Savoy
Yeah.
cocktail book.
Hmm.
It's in there, and probably the most famous book, cocktail book post Prohibition. America shut down. American cocktailers went to all over the world. They went to Cuba, they went to Mexico, but they really also went to Paris. And I think it's easy just because it's in there. It's from the same time. And then when I was watching the movie, and I actually assumed that it was the drink. I was like, well, this is an easy one. I'm just gonna pair that. And I'm watching it, and I watch it again, and it's just not that drink.
It's not. Yeah.
The bartender goes on and on and on. They have this very funny conversation about the gold rush, and the bartender. It's this wonderful bar scene because the bartender, you can really just see classic cocktail bartending of that era in it. Except that he literally does every possible thing to that glass you could ever imagine. I mean, there's citrus. We think there could be oil. There's
Yeah.
it just goes on and on and on, and he sort of has a dialogue about it. And then you realize, well, that conversation was really long, and the director probably just said, just keep your hands busy while you make this, and then they hand it over and they drink it. And so I have a number of, I kind of love sleuthing this stuff out. I have a number of books. There's an olive and a twist in that drink. So that's pretty rare, but so the 30s has some of those cocktails around the world. There's actually another one. I think there's a famous one in Argentina that had an olive and a twist around that time. And I found one in a book that's sort of called. It's based on a millionaire at the time, H.G. Mellon. I can't remember who it was exactly. But when I read the recipe, I was like, that's it. We're really close to something like it stylistically. The wonderful thing about sort of Prohibition era cocktails is they kind of have a read to them. But as you start looking at more and more and more of them, you kind of get this like flow. You see what they were doing. There are a lot of equal parts. There's a lot of order of these liqueurs. They use the same liqueurs over and over and over again. So I sort of started circling this cocktail for a very long time. Basically, a lot of times I'll go through and I'll figure out what things have, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to come back to this one. There's a couple in the books, in this book that I'm gonna have to come back to. But yeah, that's a really fun drink. It works with a sugar rim. I was coming back again. There's a sugar rim in there too. We don't know. It could be a salt rim, right? Because it probably is just a prop in the movie. But I love that one because you can kind of make it, and then you watch them make it on screen, and you're like, yeah, this is fun, and it's a wild drink, and it's certainly not a drink that you're ever going to run into at a bar, but it did exist in something.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite pre-code movie, One Way Passage.
Oh, is
I
it?
just
It's so
love
funny.
the romance.
Yeah, it's
And that
shocking.
bar scene, it's like that's where they like meet and fall in love, and it's just like, oh, it's such a great scene.
The rapport in that movie. I mean, there's some of them. I mean, It Happened One Night is another one that just has crazy rapport. It seems like Gable had such good rapport with so many people, of course, Joan. But also the rapport in One Way Passage is just incredible, and it's so tightly scripted. It's so well scripted. It's such a classic little romance. I mean, there's some of these movies that are just these like, it's such a gem. It's just so cute. And that's one of them. Cute but smart and well scripted. And when I read about the making of these movies, it shocked me how many they made here, how many these individual actors and actresses were making here, how low the budgets were, and how much of it is ad lib, or at least they were making the scripts better. I mean, they had great script writers in this era, but then sometimes like One Way Passage is a great example. Was all that really written on the page, or some of those great moments between Gable and Joan Crawford? Can't tell me all that was on the page. So it's just I agree. I think that one is a particularly charming film.
I feel like in today's Hollywood, you don't have a lot of stars that have chemistry with each other.
Right.
The most recent I can think of was like 1997 with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. I mean, you don't see that many couples that have this incredible bond on screen. I can't recall seeing that anytime recently.
Yeah, there's a number of movies that I found really interesting because there seemed to be an audience obsession at this time with you were talking a little bit about going to see Babyface in around other people and how there's this clapping, this cheering, and kind of this growing heroism for this woman as she rises in the world by any means necessary. And it's fun and it's great and it's totally a reversal, and so it's really fascinating. There's also what's going on a lot is that the Thin Man to us is funny and cute, but at that time, from what I've read about audience reactions to the Thin Man and why it was so big and started this huge franchise for them, is because they worked as a married couple as equals in this mystery. And in fact, she was richer than he was. She was bored, but they kind of solved it together. And I started to see this pattern because the bad girl is the same one, which is a Jenny Eilers that made them famous. And it's a story of basically this couple facing the world, and they were doing it together, sort of as equals. And this must have really shocked audiences because every movie that happens in was just ginormous success.
Mhm.
And it goes back to, I think that having these couples and something about the couples. So many of the movies are these couples, falling apart, coming back together, which of course every romance, every rom com, you name it. But there really is something special about the rapport that some of these actors had that just is wowing. Just being able to bat the tennis ball back and forth.
Mhm. Yeah, it's amazing the agency that these female characters had in these movies. And I honestly feel like we've lost a lot of that now. And when we're talking about the chemistry, it's like, yeah, you're right. It's like, it seems like she's just following whatever is happening with the guy in modern movies. And that's not the pre code way. And that's what I really love about them.
I love the characters, and there's so many different types of female agency, which I find fascinating.
Mhm.
Every movie that, certainly the big actresses, the way that Barbara Stanwyck is so streetwise, never going to pull anything over on her. But then there's the Marianne Hopkins, sort of like up for anything, but also kind of bubbly. And then you have like Mae West, who's just another expression of like how to how to get by, like how to make it in the world and succeed. And I find that really fascinating. I find what's fascinating is how compelling these movies are, and the fact that we settle back into the old tropes. Um, I think it's one of the Dorothy Asner. She was like the first female to direct a sound film. She's the first one to be inducted. She does the movie. I can't remember the title right now, but Anyway, it could have been just a pretty woman, right? It could have been a setup, rich man, prostitute. And she just flips that script in such interesting ways. And it's like in 1930, 31, we can have scripts where people are like really well-rounded characters doing fascinating things. And these are hit movies. And then, in our time, I mean, loosely our time, right? It's probably 25 years ago since we had Pretty Woman, but it's still such a huge trope in our movies. And you watch Pretty Woman, and you're like, give me a break, It's like doormat, when they did this in 1930, the actress was like a pilot, and
Yeah.
she was a novelist, and like, and you get up to Pretty Woman is kind of just like, oh, it's just permissive, and you watch it, you're like, it doesn't make any sense. Once you watch, basically, pre-code ruins you for like
Yes.
bad, both female and male characters, because the male characters are so fascinating to me too, because Clark Gable starts out as kind of this rough and tough guy, but he's so suave at the same time, really complicated. His range is really wide, so you're not getting one of these modern action hero guys who sort of just like, punches somebody and delivers a line, Like Clark Gable is wooing everybody in the room, and tough.
Totally.
Code of Norma Shears that I really admire, and I don't think it's in this book, but it's so good, is a free soul.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of chooses between Gable and Leslie Howard, and then she decides, you know what? Neither one of you will do. I'm going on my own. And oh my God, that's such a good movie.
I love that movie. I shied away from it because her father is like, it has a number of destructive alcoholic scenes in it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna ask anybody to make a drink. So there's a couple. There's a few other movies like that have there's a lot of movies we shouldn't shy away from either. There's blackface, there's yellowface, there's stuff going on in here. Sometimes I'll have a movie. I'm like, there's so many pre-codes. I don't need to do the Al Jolson and stuff. I can do other stuff. I do put in the Bitter Tears of General Yen, which I find one of the most fascinating movies ever made. Politically, too. Of course, it has Niles Asher and Yellowface. But, as I say in the head note, it's just an extraordinarily impressive movie for its time, and we have to be able to give that to it. To have, a mixed race couple, basically, it's a big fever dream where a white woman goes and, sort of has Stockholm syndrome when she gets abducted by a Chinese warlord. It's so beautiful. Anyway, there's some really wild, and of course, that's really Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, Recode is just one of my favorite eras of filmmaking. I just find it so invigorating and so refreshing, and just I don't know. There's just so many fascinating, complicated characters.
Mm-hmm. And the pacing is so good. I mean, most of these movies are 90 minutes or less. Good luck finding something of that length now.
Not going to happen today.
And it's a full meal, right? It's a full meal in those 90 minutes.
Yes.
You've really gone through everything the 3-hour movies go through and more,
Yes.
Like Call Her Savage. That's got 10 movies worth in that
God.
hour and a half, roughly.
I had only ever seen clips of that before I wrote this book. I watched it the first time, sort of like through my hands, like, what is happening on this? And then I watched it the second time. I actually had a moment where I thought, this is a lot. But it's so pre-code, right? It's so quintessentially pre-code that I could take it out there. But yeah, I love that movie too. It's a fun one. It was funny while I was working on this, my girlfriend, we watched a lot of the movies together, but I'm watching like multiple times a day. I'm hunting around all the time. She would just pass by the room and stop and be like, what is going on now? These movies, you see a clip of them and you're just like, I'm going to sit and watch the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're that sort of drawing. And I hope that comes out of this book. There's been a few pre-code books now, and I hope there's more pre-code shows on TTM. Certainly, the blogs and the shows and what you guys do. And I know there's precode.com and a number of pre-code things. Yeah, I'm not going to go too long about it, but one of the fascinating things about doing this book, too, is just how similar the eras that we're in between you go to the 30s, cultural upheaval, facing big political problems, facing big economic disparities. Um, and so I really came out of the movies with this sense of hope in a strange way because I thought, 1930 was really, really bad. And, they had Howard Hughes, we had Elon Musk. I mean, the parallels would just really go on for, really, really, there's so many parallels. Distress and whatnot. And these movies show you that people made it through these times looking great with a cocktail in their hand, and if they can do it, we can do it. So I think, this movie, the book came out, and, we're heading into an election year. And, these movies are escapism, wonderful escapism. We actually have great characters, we got great costumes, we got great sets. So, for people looking for just like a better movie in general, these are it. Mm-hmm. But they're also not just escapism, they really are kind of uplifting. So you kind of come out of so many of these movies thinking, that was ridiculously bad then. And we're the same way now, but we're going to make it.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'm looking to do with your book, I want to have pre-code parties and maybe combine this book with this book.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to talk tonight the divorcee, and we're going to make the divorcee food from here, the divorcee drinks from here. I'll show the divorcee in there. So I'm already planning like tons and tons of get-togethers based on both.
I love it. I love hearing that.
I'm going to have to hire designated drivers for all my guests, though, because some of these drinks are strong.
I think, what I love about these movies is they're so book-like in that, they are shorter, but they're so meaty and there's so much to talk about. You can almost have, so many, like modern movies. Can you really watch a 3-hour movie and then hang out with your friends and talk about it afterwards? No. But these you can. Mm-hmm. You can watch an hour-long movie and everyone's going to get up and have a drink and be like, let's talk about that because we have to, So it's almost like a book club. I think that's a great idea. I think these movies are made for having discussions around them. And I hope
Pre-code club.
Yeah, pre-code club. I hope people do. Yeah. I mean,
we've had questions here on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
And if I don't get to everybody's question, we'll definitely all be answering them later on. See. Danny's expressing that he now needs a cocktail.
There. Make yourself a drink, Danny. Cheers.
Danny, let's see. Yes, Danny, Elizabeth does make her own vanilla syrup.
I did not for this one, though. I got lazy. I used the old Tarani. I was pressed for time, but Carrie you made your own vanilla syrup for this, and it looks way better than mine.
I hope I did it correctly. Let's see, Danny Miller, I remember a few years ago there was a worldwide shortage of bitters. Is that over?
It must be, because I don't have a problem finding them.
Yeah, I know the bitters are back.
Yeah.
Okay. Ruth is asking what cocktail Andre made. She was running late for the happy hour show here. Andre made the balanced accounts based on the pure Pinot de Danny wants a drinkable donut garnish. We all want a donut.
I know. No, the photos in this book were really wonderful, and that's something that I love about all of the TCM cocktail books. The photo styling is superb, and for someone that has quite a lot of cocktail books, it is really helpful to have the photo next to it, and it's like, it makes me see like, okay, do I want to make this? Does this look like something I want to make, or not tonight? Sometimes the photo sells it when you have a lot of options.
Oh, for sure, and you can just see whether it's a long drink.
Yeah.
A sipper or something light and refreshing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the photography, I've been so lucky. This is Running Press. It's my 8th book with them. This is my 2nd book with that stylist. My first one with that photographer who I was excited to work with. My name is Chicago, Philadelphia. They shot this shoot and they were sending me the pic. Normally I'm able to go to all the photo shoots, which is something that I love. I wasn't able to on this book. But they started sending in, there's a lot of back and forth. How about this? What do you think about this? What's the color on this? and they started sending me the sheets back, and they were just luminous and beautiful pictures of this. PCM really knocks it out of the park. Running Press really knocks it out of the park with
Yeah.
this. And then the exciting thing on my end is they basically give me a login, and I go into all these photos and get back into the archives and pull the photos out, which is always really exciting, wild. It's very easy to get lost in there. Just looking at they have all the stills from the movies and the advertising that went into it, and just outtakes, and the sky's the limit kind of thing.
That's amazing.
But really, really fun. And so we were able to just pull some really fun photos out.
Ruth Munsack is asking, Andre, where are you from and how do you get started in cocktails as a career?
Oh, yeah. So the brief version is that I started out as a restaurant reviewer, and I went into wine writing originally. And then I started writing about cocktails at a cocktail column or two, and pitched a first book in probably way back in the day. It came out in 2016 called Movie Night Menus, which was sort of a drinks Bible that my idea was to write a book that I couldn't find at that time. And so it was a book that goes in chronological order. So all the books at that time were in alphabetical order, which I've never understood putting a cocktail book in alphabetical order. How do you know what you're looking for? Are you really going to open the book and be like, I'm going to have a B cocktail tonight, right? Or an F cocktail. So I thought, that is crazy. All my books run in alphabetical order. I'm going to do it in historical chronological order. That book ended up doing really well, and this is book 12. So I basically have been writing a book or two a year. The pandemic was a wild time. I luckily was able to write a lot. People were drinking at home a lot. So I had a number of books backed up that I wrote and that were released around that time or later. But yeah, that's the short answer. It's been a wild career. I wrote a book called Booze Cruise, so I was able to circumnavigate the world in 2019, right before the pandemic happened. I wrote the book for Batman. I wrote the book for John Wayne's family. I wrote the book for Big Lebowski. So it's just sort of been a really fun, of course, the Booze and Vinyl series, which has just been a wonderful experience too. So I never set out to be a full-time cocktail book writer, but here I am. Somebody's asked to do it.
And we're grateful you're here.
I'm a big fan of Gold Diggers of 1933. So just to show everybody that's watching the layout, how beautiful these photos are. We love our Mark Vieira around here. And then you named the cocktail Pettin' in the Park. That is so everything. I love this.
So there's a great scene in that movie. If you hold the picture up, you'll be able to see that all those tops are sheer, for one, because we're in pre-code. So pretty alarming stills for the time. Petting in the Park, in the movie, it's just bizarre. There's a number of bizarre dance numbers in pre-code. That's one of the more bizarre ones. The girls are sitting on park benches. All the boys are with them on the park benches. And the women wear ever more restrictive and serious, like basically ending up in body armor because the boys are so aggressive. And they're supposedly just petting in the park. So there's a whole song about pet park. It's totally hilarious. And basically, there's Madonna bras, the pointy Madonna bras, 7 years before Madonna did it. So I love that. The Gold Diggers is one of just truly spectacular pre-code movies. There's some of these movies, like One Way Passage. If you have friends over, you want to have a kind of a nice romantic tearjerker that's very cute and very witty. And then there's a number of pre-codes that are just, if you want to watch a crazy spectacle where everyone's jaw will be on the floor most of the movie. And that the 1933 is one of them.
And I love the name. This is so poetic. The name of your cocktail for Queen Christina is called Serenade in a Snowstorm. How beautiful. That is gorgeous. I love the name. I love the layout of this. Your layout team and photographer and Mark Vieira, everybody did such a good job. I'm just loving the this book.
But it's always, I love getting, I see them in PDF, and then the book arrives and you sort of open it up and you sort of like after months, year or more working on it, you sort of weep. It's just so beautiful. The material's so amazing. I mean, when I was working on this book, my attitude is like, listen, I know the cocktails. I'm going to do right by these movie head notes to sell them and sell why they're important and people should watch them, and then just get out of the way of this incredible material, and just trying to put it together in a form like this book that makes it accessible. And that Queen Christina, again, that's another one that doesn't have any cocktail content in there. It was a really important film for the code because she is she leaves her castle as a man. A man, man ends up sleeping with her, and then she reveals that she's the woman. Of course, they have to stay in an inn together during a snowstorm, basically. A classic setup. But she doesn't reveal that she's the queen. And she takes him as a lover and has another lover and is very Garbo. And it was very forbidden.
And speaking of which, Baby Garbo, Cora Sue Collins, is still with us today, and she's even done a Hollywood Kitchen episode too.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, she's a force of nature. We love Cora Sue.
That's fun. I mean, Garbo was so huge. That picture, when I saw that picture in the archives, the movie marquee with her as this queen, she just has these spectacular roles. And, of course, she came on with one of the great opening talkie lines of all time, give me a whiskey, baby, and don't be stingy. And I had put that in, I think it's in movie night menu, so I decided to do Queen Christina, just because it was such an important movie for the code being enforced.
Goodness, Andre, what are some of the pre-codes that didn't make the book, but they were really like this close to making?
Oh, well, so I love a number of, there's moments in certainly the beginning there in Joan Crawford's career, I can't give up any of them. I mean, Grand Hotel, such a great movie for her. I also had that in movie night menus. I was torn to put it in this one. I ended up with Dinner at 8, the other sort of great ensemble film of the era. She has a movie Possessed, which has some of just the greatest images in pre-code. There's a moment where a poor young Joan Crawford watches a train go by, and each train car is like a different luxury, right? There's like a luxury nursing, a luxury dinner, luxury coffee, luxury. And it's just one of the most gorgeous scenes in pre-code. I went with Dance Fools Dance instead. Going back to a little bit to, I'm really attracted to, and I think people are interested in, when Faulkner came to Hollywood, when F. Geraldton Hollywood, and a number of movies that they wrote. The story of Temple Drake, an incredible, important pre-code that everyone should seek out. Really heavy material. So I had some of those that I personally love, and I just shied away from the heavy material. And I also wanted to have a really good variety in this, where if people watch the movie, not only do I want some tiki and some, some people this could be their first cocktail book, and I always think that. So I want to make sure you're going to have something in the, if you buy the liquor for this book, I'm not going to steer you wrong. You're going to use all these bottles again, in your life, basically, your alcohol life. And but I wanted that to happen. But I also wanted a really good sense of like, yeah, there were serious movies, but we do have Tarzan and his mate, which it's a gorgeously shot movie. Don't get me wrong, but nobody's going to argue that it's like really heavy, Oscar material. But it's okay, and you really want to show that diversity. I think I have some personal loves. My Man Godfrey, I really
Love it.
love with passion, that movie. There's some movies that just, for whatever reason, I had too many of the different actors or actresses represented. And it gets a little heavy anyway on some of them. But again, these were the movies that really were forbidden, right? So there's a number of Harlow in there. Harlow's not necessarily my favorite pre-code actress. I love her. I'm not like Harlow obsessed necessarily. It's just that, Red Dust, she has this bathing scene that's just, first of all, fun and glorious, but also just like you can't do that on screen, you know? And so there's some of that happening. So I just wanted stuff to be really over the top and for people to see it. I do go, I put a number of the Busby Berkeleys in there, but of course his career is extraordinarily short at its height, but also so influential and so ridiculously over the top with either being erotic or funny or things you weren't allowed to get away with. So there's some of that. I mean, I'm still always finding pre-codes. I've watched so much pre-code, and I go by year, and I just keep looking, and there's of course always more. And you find these really charming movies out there. So this is like a dip in the toe. I mean, dipping your toe into pre-code, and there's 60. So.
It's a gift that will never stop giving.
Right? Once you find pre-code, they're just part of your life, I think, and you
Yes.
start referencing them, and unfortunately you start comparing everything to them, and you're like, oh, this is kind of like pre-code, but not as good. I
Anna
also,
Wong, who's I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Anna Wong, who is a friend, and
Yeah.
she's the niece of Anime Wong, and she's done a couple of Hollywood Kitchens. She is asking, can we get the book on Amazon?
Absolutely. You can get the book wherever books are sold, directly from Running Press Hachette to go to your local bookstore and ask for it, to Amazon. Yes, absolutely.
Support Larry Edmunds in Hollywood. We love Larry Edmunds here, and they're the last bookstore in Hollywood, and we try to do everything we can, a lot of us, to give them our money because we want them to stick around. So
Yeah, you need
call
to come
Larry
out
Edmunds.
do an event with them. But yeah, call them up. Yeah, Anime Wong. I was lucky enough to be able to put Matt as Mandalay, right? No, it's
Shanghai Express.
Shanghai Express. Thank you,
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
really
Shanghai
good.
Express.
And I love the cocktail that you did, the Shanghai Lily. It's so good.
I love that. So I ended up there was a gentleman named Charles H. Baker. He traveled the world and wrote about cocktails between the two world wars, which was this really amazing time in the world where the war had ended and sort of the world opened up to travel. After the Industrial Revolution, you could take ships and planes and everything. So he went around the world. And I was able to go around the world, sort of not following in his footsteps as much as just going around the world again, 100 years later to great cocktail cities. But I really looked at him for incredible source material of what were they drinking in Shanghai, in the 1930s that they would have could have been drinking on that train. I went to Shanghai in my journeys. I went to the Long Bar there, and I just wanted to evoke. That movie's so evocative and so beautiful that I just wanted to evoke something glamorous for that one. So I love that movie and that drink. It's a fun pairing.
Absolutely. So let's see any more questions, but again, I will check them, and we will all check them later on. Any final thoughts?
No,
Yeah.
watch Pre-Code, and I'm begging the Criterion to put more of these in the collection, please, if anyone's listening. But I will say the Criterion channel does have a pretty good selection of them now, and I was able to find several things from the book on the channel. So if you're struggling to where do I get this? Try Criterion channel.
Also, Lorber Classics, they put out a lot of really good DVDs as well, and they do have some pre-code selection.
Okay, great.
Another good resource. And I try, I mean, obviously I can't buy everything because I'm on a budget, but when I can, I try to buy these DVDs because I kind of want to put it out there that I will vote with my wallet. If it's on DVD, I will spend my $25 to get a copy. Because I think a lot of it is probably based on sales and economics and things like that. And so I want these films to stay in circulation.
Absolutely.
Well, too, they can really be these great, and it's like, it's like an album that you buy and you put it on again and again at different times of your life. And going back to a little bit how much this time echoes our time, I find these movies to be incredibly uplifting. So if you have that favorite album that you put on when you're kind of like having a bad day, these movies, when you buy them, so many of them, like you're not gonna have you're gonna have a different day after you watched it.
Yeah.
You'll still be having a bad day, but it's gonna be better, and you're gonna feel like you're part of some sort of like human community watching it versus watching just putting on something streaming. I mean, they really are movies that you come to go back to again and again and again. So They are great. I hope that, I think if people get on social media and stuff and start asking about some of these and saying, hey, we want to see this, TCM will respond or somebody will sell them online. So yeah, there's a little bit of a hurdle getting to watch them. I mean, one of the things that shocked me getting into this book is some of these movies have only been put back together. I think one of the more recent ones was the scenes that were missing were just found in 2014.
Mm.
So this is like still recent news. For movies that are this old, this is still recent news to have 2014. They're still finding snippets of them. So it's sort of an ongoing. I think the more pre-code fans there are, the more books come out. The genre will end up, or it's not even a genre. Noir is a genre. This is just a time period. But I think the more people that demand it, it's going to become like noir, where like this is pre-code, this is a thing, and we need to preserve these, and these are important, and they're very specific, and they do this type of thing for this type of person. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah. And I mean, super grateful to TCM for widening the audience. I mean, certainly they brought me in at the festival, and I hope this book brings a lot of people into it too.
Yeah. Yeah, hats off to them for this is some of this material is really difficult to dive into. I sort of asked, what can I do? What can I do? And there's really no answer. And I mean, it's not my first book, so I know, but there are these parameters, and you sort of expect this. Maybe there's this corporate hand, do this, don't do that. And I kind of went with what I wanted. I got no, never any kind of pushback on the material, that kind of thing. It just like do what you do, and it's incredible because I think when they do that, then people like Mark Vieira and myself, we do what we do and we love it, so we're just going to put it on in the best possible light, and I think hopefully when people pick up the book, they'll just see that like there's just a lot of love behind the scenes of this book, from the photographer who came in to me, to Mark, to my editor Cindy at Running Press, and the TCM folks. So,
And again, if you're not an alcohol drinker like myself, there's still beautiful images, terrific stuff in this book. You can make mocktail versions of it, which Liz has done for me. So you can still enjoy it regardless of whether or not you drink.
Mhm.
it's a beautiful coffee table book. It really is.
Kitchen book, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Andre, this has been fantastic. And Liz, thank you so much to both of you. Where can people find each of you on social media if they want to follow you?
I'm at Cinema Sips on Instagram and Twitter, and Facebook. So yeah, follow along, and cinemasips.com. There's a new movie and cocktail every week from every era of, maybe not a couple silence up to, right now. So I'm thinking about doing challengers soon. So it's definitely like runs the gamut of movies and cocktails.
Nice, that's fantastic. I'm at Andre Darlington on everything. There's an AndreDarlington.com, there's a boozeandvinyl.com for that particular book, but just AndreDarlington.com. I'm online. If people have questions, hit me up on the socials. I tour a lot, and I'm on online a lot. So people can find me in cities that they're going to. I have a tour list out on my website as well. If people happen to be aligned in the city where I'm at, I just was able to see Carrie in Los Angeles coming out to do an event there, a couple events there. So yeah, love to talk about pre-code and cocktails.
Excellent. Well, a toast to pre-code and cocktails.
Cheers!
Cheers.
Thank you so much for having me on.
And I do have a Patreon and a Buy Me a Coffee, and all proceeds go to help buying ingredients and supplies. And I'm so grateful to everyone who watches. And please stay tuned for more food, fun, and film history. Hollywood Kitchen.